Welcome back, man. I'm so glad you're able to make it.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here.
I'm glad. So I think because you deal with a lot of gentlemen on a regular basis, you should have some interesting insight on this when it comes to weakness and what is that and how is that defined. Let's first of all let's talk about when I say weakness in men. What is that? What rings? What does that mean to you? What comes to mind?
Um, for me, I would say more of a mentality. Um, so when I think of a weakness, it's somewhere we might be deficient. Um, so I would say someone that's easily distracted, someone who lacks focus. Um, when I think of weakness in men, someone that sweats the small stuff.
Right.
Um, Someone who's not looking out for others, only worried about yourself, lacks emotional intelligence, um, lacks empathy. So things of that nature would be uh, what it
Do,
would mean to me.
do you think society and influences as a whole have sensationalized this weakness in men, or do you think it has made it better or workable or repairable?
Hmm. I think it's a combination. Um, in some ways, I feel like we need to show our emotions. I think that's a strength. Uh, Being vulnerable. But then at the same time, I think some men, it's gotten to the point where we whining about everything. Everything's an issue.
Right.
It's always a problem. It's always a complaint. And I think society, somewhat, social media, is pushing that narrative a lot um, to kind of, I won't say try to take our power away, but distract us um, as to what real manhood is and real strength is in men. Like I don't feel like I need to put you down to be more of a man.
Do you think that our, well, let me ask this different, but let me rephrase the question. Are there common characteristics that you see in men that have this issue with weakness? Are there familiar things they see? Did you see that they all have this issue, this, and this? Are there some things, key characteristics you see are in men that have that issue of being weak or dealing with a weakness?
Uh, well, I would say being weak-minded.
Weak-minded, right?
Like I was saying, easily distracted, unwilling to hear other perspectives. It's kind of like, nah, it's my way. I'm standing on it, which in some ways is good to stand on your principles.
Right.
But I can still listen and respect another perspective, and still be able to stand on my principles as well.
Can you give us an example of that? Were you seeing an experience you might have had?
Um, so I facilitate an anger management class,
Okay.
and I was talking about my marriage, where things didn't work out. I made some poor decisions
Right.
that led to my marriage ending, and I was talking about an experience in the relationship, and a gentleman in the class was like, "Well, she was being disrespectful." And I was like, well, no, I don't see it that way.
Right.
I see it as there were things that I could have done differently, as well as some things I might feel that she could have done differently. And he was just like, well, no, she should have been serving you, and had she been serving you, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I can understand what you're saying.
Right.
There are ways that I do feel like things could have been better both ways, but my thing was I can accept the accountability for where you know, and for my growth, I have to look at, well, what changes can I make, and not just, well, no, it's somebody else's fault.
Right.
So it's kind of that self-evaluation, and so just a man not being able to hold himself accountable
Yeah.
and making excuses. I can say there can be a reason for you doing something. You can
Right.
say, hey, this is what I was thinking at the time. This is what I was feeling. This is my reason. but not making an excuse for it and being able to hold yourself accountable and say, regardless of what I was thinking or feeling, I made the wrong decision or I made a poor decision.
Do you think vulnerability is a weakness in men?
Absolutely not. I think it's a strength. I'm actually reading a book right now called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And one of the foundational principles is vulnerability. And that's being vulnerable enough to ask for help.
Right.
And then also being vulnerable enough to give help or give feedback because it could be rejected. And sometimes, you might not want to reach out or you might not want to give your
For the
feedback
fear of.
because you're afraid of being rejected.
Right.
Or so vulnerability, I feel like it's a big strength because you have to be willing to take that slap in the face.
Yeah.
Whether it's somebody giving you feedback or rejecting, what you might have to offer.
What do you think needs to happen in the next couple of years, for this next generation, to get them out of this weakness that is cultivating our men these days?
Continue conversation. I think guys like ourselves, the men that you brought into this group, our generation, it's our responsibility to not just have conversations with each other, but pull those young men, like my dad calls it, the front porch experience, where we're sitting around the campfire per se,
Yeah.
having these conversations, talking about our experiences, talking about our head bumps,
Yeah.
and being genuine and vulnerable and saying, hey, I messed up. I made this poor decision and this is how I can help guide these young men
Right.
or other brothers, our peers, and saying, this is how we can continue to get better and grow.
Yeah. Building a collective, creating a conversation, and then sharing the results, not just the results, but the experience, allowing them to see this is where I tripped, so this is where I
Right.
fell, and these are the consequences. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Adrian, I really appreciate you coming out and giving me your insight on this. You definitely gave me some new things to think about, and I'm looking forward to us discussing it tomorrow and getting the ladies' feedback on this, because a lot of times as men or women see us as weakness, see us as weak, and it's easy just to attach a title to somebody than to dig into it and figure out what's the
Right.
root of it. And as a man, there are parts where I kill it at, and there are parts where I just suck,
Right.
and not being categorized, oh, yep, you're just this, it's where we don't want to be, and it's very hard for us because you get put on that topic to be judged that way, put in that position to be judged that way, and not have remorse or be so resentful that we don't want to fight our way out of it or redefine ourselves. So the purpose of this conversation is to change the perception of what a weak man is, address where true weakness is, and come up with a course of action so that our kids don't have to deal with this. So once again, I really appreciate you coming out, and hanging out with me, and I'm looking
Appreciate
forward
you
to
having
chatting up
me.
with you some more on
Most
this topic in
definitely.
the near future.